We've all had fun the last few weeks learning all the technical stuff and all the little gadgets I get to work with to teach and also to use in Old Men's Stories. Well, in the culmination of it, we're going to have a few more little technical things that I'm going to show you. But I'll show you a little, give you a little of the preparation of it. Now, I started this January the 2nd. That was the first meeting, and we've done, I think we're on the 18th one or so, 17th one. And it's about starting nowhere and having to give an hour radio show every week versus 5 to 7 minute speech every once in a while. This was scary for me. I was terrified. Oh. And I said, I thought I was going to have to do it alone. And then I sort of looked around and I found a volunteer, Jeff Young, who Mike knows. He's the president of the Toastmasters at South Bay Hermetic Graphics. And Jeff said, oh, I'll do it with you. So we have done all of these Old Men's Stories together. Now, Jeff had to bring in Old Men's Stories isn't really about old men. It's just about people that want to teach or talk stories. I just like the words. I love when you say Old Men's Stories. Because Old Men's Stories originally for me came from sort of my study of my history. And one of my heroes and also one of my relatives was Daniel Boone. And Daniel Boone, when he was older, could have cashed in on his name. But instead, he chose to sit up on some steps in a house just outside of town in Missouri, I think it was. And he would sit and tell stories with his Indian buddies for hours and hours and hours each day. And they would just have fun telling life stories. And I thought that was so cool. I says, man, I'd like to do that. That's something. But I always, when I do things, have to do more than one thing at once. So I said, well, I could tell Old Men's Stories, and I could have a radio show, and I could have videos on the whole thing, and maybe we even work into a video present, like a TV thing. I said, well, that's one of my directions. So, as you saw in the preparation of this thing, you had to do a whole bunch of technical things. You had to get the stories ready, and you had to sit and talk. And have all the unexpected things that happen, like your guest speakers don't show, your microphone stop working, you try to talk on a phone and the phone doesn't work. All of the little things that happen in it. Well, we're going to have a little present now about an Old Men's Stories. So what I'm going to do is I have one because this particular thing's in, I have one on laughter. But our Old Men's Story is going to be about crying. And sometimes you laugh so hard you cry. So it fits. It all fits if you have a good story technique. So let me start our radio show.
Roland Willits
and Jeff Young.
Old Men's Stories. Welcome to our show. We have some wonderful stories to share. This is a little introduction on what we will share this hour. In our 20th show, we will follow crying's many faces. First, our stories will follow the flow of tears through a maze of feelings. Second, we will move our listeners with laughter and sadness, crystallize in crying. Third, we will share fun stories. And fourth, we will have some new masters sharing life stories. I pulled out little segments of my life where crying really worked for me. In other words, they were life
things that happened, and I cried, and it made it better. One thing, I'll give you an example first, and I'll tell you that I used it many times before that for the same purposes, but didn't emphasize it as much as they did. I watched my granddaughter playing basketball. It's playing basketball. And these girls would go out play, and all of a sudden someone would fall and hurt themselves. And in men's basketball, they just get up and keep playing and maybe limp a little, and then the coach would sort of call them off. The girls would start crying. And the first time I saw it, I says, "Oh, geez, she's really going to be mocked." And you know what happened? It was the most awesome thing. They just let her cry. Then someone else went in, took her spot. No one said anything. She went to the far end of the bench and sat there and cried until she was over it, and then she joined the girls. Well, I says, well, this is unique. And then I watched it happen 3 or 4 times during the whole game. And I got, that is so wonderful the way they handled crying. They just allowed the space to cry. They put them on the, they just went to a spot on the bench where they could just cry alone and feel and get it over with and then go back and play. And I said, that is so great. And then I thought about my life, and I thought about times I hurt myself. And you know, those times that I hurt myself and I cried, the pain was less. And so I just said, well, the pain's less, it's practical to cry. So I would cry every time I really got hurt, because it was less pain. And I think maybe that's nature's way of releasing the pain or emphasizing something else, because it hurts less when you cry. So women, being the most practical things in the universe, of course would do something like that. So I've always cried that way. But one of the other times that I cried is I had a project I had to do, and I didn't know if I could do it. And I was all alone in this project. And you might hear it in another story, but I won't tell you the details except that I had to spend hours, and in fact I spent, I bet it was a couple thousand hours working on this. And it was on a promise. And I didn't know I could do it. And sometimes I get so tired that I would make mistakes and I'd have to do a day or two's work over again. And sometimes I said, I just can't solve this and I need it solved right now. And I would sit and I would just cry until everything was over, and then I go back and get the job done. Because the job was something I had promised, and we do keep our promises whenever we can. Well, I found that crying is something that absolutely relieves pressure. I'm a very pragmatic person in a lot of ways, and I found that crying relieves pressure on me. And I can sit down and calmly look at things afterwards, breathe, and refocus, and know that I can get it done. And it helped me with some of the lessons in life. One of my favorite is I can do anything that any other person in the world can do. The only difference between them and me is time. They may be able to do it faster than me. Now, I'm talking about mental things. I'm not talking about someone that's 7 feet and reaching a basket. I'm talking about being a doctor, a lawyer, something in college. Almost anyone can accomplish some task. It's just a time function. And our education system does not determine how much you can do, but how much you can do fast. So when you get, that's all they're doing is measuring speed of what you do. It puts this knowledge back into you as a human being. And it builds your ego where you know that you can accomplish great things in life. And part of that process where everything slows down and you never think you're going to get it done is to cry and let off the pressure. And then run back at the job and really move with all your heart and soul in it. I do this at all of the things at life that push me to limits. And I love to push limits. Our life is this microsecond in the universe, or shorter. And you got to cram a lot in a little time. Jeff?